Hello guys and welcome back to a new video. This time, we will go through the steps of making such classic interior design, so without any further ado, let us jump into it. I have this CAD file which contain the floor plan, a guide sketch for the main wall, and some profiles we need for the sweeps. I did separate some elements into different layers, and now we can save it as a DXF file so Blender can read it. Once we are inside Blender, we can clear the scene from the default objects. I will also name this collection to keep everything organized. To import the drawing file we need to enable the DXF add-on, so do that from the preferences, then go to File, Import, and select the DXF option. Navigate to where you saved the file and hit Import. Here it is. Now as always, when we import drawings into Blender, we need to check the scale. We do that by selecting any known objects like doors, which comes usually in a 1 meter wide, so we can highlight the door area and press N to see the parameters. And 1 meter it is, so we're good to go. I will change the length unit to centimeters just because it's easier to work with in small scenes. I did add a new collection. We will start making the scene from this drawing and move it to this new collection one by one. Here we have the walls and some parts of the sketch in the same layer. To fix that, we can hit Tab to highlight one of them, then hit P to separate it. After that, and while the walls are selected, hit Shift to isolate this element. The drawing did import as a curve, so with this one, we need to convert it to mesh, then hit Tab for edit mode, hit A to select all, F to fill it and make it a surface, then press E to extrude it up by 3 meters. If the extrude goes in the wrong direction, just hit the minus or the plus key from your keyboard. We can now with the right mouse button move it to the modeling collection. To finish the walls we still have the areas around the windows and over the door, and as before, we can select them one by one, convert it to mesh, and then in edit mode, hit A to select all, hit F to fill the surface, and finally press E to extrude them. Those parts will have an 80 centimeters height, and make a copy of those parts to close the walls over the windows. Now repeat the same process with the door curve, convert it to mesh, hit Tab for edit mode, press A to select all, F to make it a surface, then extrude by 80, and move it up by 220. We can now select all the parts and hit Ctrl J to join them. For the floor, same as before, convert the curve to mesh and fill it. I do need to rotate this sketch by 90, so just make sure to separate any other elements that might imported in the same layer. Then if we rotate it, the pivot point is way far from the correct place. To fix that, we need to place the cursor in this corner, then from the Object tab, set the origin to 3D cursor, rotated now by 90. I did hit the number pad 1 for front view and hold the Z key to switch into wireframe mode. We will use those curves to make the wall sweeps, so hit Shift D to make a copy and move it inside the wall. We do need to separate the inner curve from the outer one, So do that by selecting it in edit mode and hit P to separate it. We did that so we can use different profiles in each of them. The profiles also are imported as one layer, so I will separate them quickly. We can take those two and move them near the wall. With those two profiles, make sure the origin is set to the object mass, and scale it up a bit just to make it visible. We will edit the scale once we have the sweep. We can now select this curve and, under the Geometry subtab, go to Bevel and select the Object section. Then take the pen icon and choose the profile you need. In our case it's this one, and the sweep should appear. After that, select the profile and scale it down to fit. We do have a problem with this area, it's flipped as you see, and same with this bottom corner, and it look like there's a problem with the curve, so we can look into it, but I always take the shortcut, and with a symmetry object like this, we can just delete the wrong part and replace it with the right one from the opposite side. So once I deleted the parts that are flipped, we can turn on the snap, and copy the right sweep to the left area. Now with the second curve, select it and go into the curve settings, take the pen icon and choose the profile, then scale it down to fit. This one also has a problem, and it seems like some vertices are not wielded right, so you can turn off the sweep, convert this curve to mesh, and merge its vertices by distance, then convert it back again to curve, and enable the sweep, or we can delete it and replace it with similar shaped. Once we're done with scaling those sweeps, we need to fill the inner ones. You can do that by adding a mesh and scale it to fit those gaps. You can also turn them into mesh and bridge the opposite faces. Once you're done with this part of the wall, hit Shift-D and copy it to the left side. After that we can select those objects, move them to the modeling collection, and snap them back to the wall. Now with the same process we can make the wall trims. We just need a curve along its path, so what I usually do is add a new plane, hit Tab for edit mode and select all vertices, then with the right mouse button, hit Merge at Center. This will make the plane into one vertex. After that, we can take this vertex and snap it to one of the corners, then extrude it along the inner border. Those small rectangles are just a guide for the columns' places, so don't mind them. Once we're done with the line, we're gonna move it up just to make it visible. This line's still a mesh, so we need to convert it to get the curve settings. I do have here two profiles for the wall trim, so you can choose any of them, move it near the walls and scale it up to make it visible. Then as before, we select the curve, go to the settings, take the pen icon from the bevel object and select the profile we have. Now with the wall trim and the ceiling sweeps, we need to make sure the rotation and pivot points are in the right side. Like in this one, the origin point is in the middle, so half the sweep is in the wall. To fix this, we need to move this yellow dot to this corner, so put the cursor there and set origin to 3D cursor, then reset the pin icon field and the problem should be fixed. The wall sweeps are a bit over the 3 meters level, so I will increase the wall height by 10. Now for the ceiling sweep, I will add a new plane and merge the vertices into one. Snap this one vertex on the top corner and extrude it along the outer border. Once we do that, we can go as before and convert it into curve. We will use this profile for the ceiling sweep, and as we said before, we need it to be in the right rotation and the origin point need to be in the corner. So I will put the cursor here and set the origin to 3D cursor, then rotate it by 180 to face the inner lines, and make sure to apply rotation by hitting Ctrl A. We can now select the curve and with the bevel settings, take the pen icon and choose the profile. This inner part should be more extend to set on the columns once we add them, and we can do that by editing the profile dimensions. Here as you see, we have a problem with the bottom right corner, and that's probably caused by two vertices over each other, so we need to weld them. To fix this, we can clear the object field, select the curve and convert it back to mesh, then select all vertices and merge them by distance, and a message should tell you how many this process deleted. After that, convert it back again to curve and enable the sweep. Now we can select the profile, and in edit mode, move the left vertices to extend the sweep inside the room. To complete the scene we need to import some models, and for that, make a new collection. We will import the chimney and the column first. To do that, go to File, Append, select the Models file, and inside it, choose the Collection folder. And here they are. We can now select the chimney and move it to the right place, then scale it down to fit, and snap it to the front wall. For this column, we will need it on the left and right walls, so rotate it by 90, then move it to the right place using those small rectangles as a guide. We also need to scale it on the Z-axis to fit the wall's height, so in Edit mode, select those vertices and snap them to the top level. Once we're done with this column, we can hit Shift D to copy it around the room. Again, select those 4 columns, copy them to the opposite wall, and use the mirror command to fix their direction. We do have a shape over the chimney, so I will copy one of the columns, rotate it by 90, then scale it down to fit. Between those 2 columns over the chimney, I will make a diamond-shaped mirror. We do that by adding a new plane, and in Edit mode, make it fit the area. with face selection, hit subdivide. We need at least 7 cuts. Then using the decimate modifier, we can unsubdivide the plane and make the rectangular cuts into diamond shape. Once you do that, apply the modifier, select those diamond faces in edit mode and hit I to inset them, then extrude them to outside a bit. After that we can put the pivot point on individuals and scale down those highlighted faces. By now you might get bored with this grey look, so turn on cavity to make the viewport work better. We did import small guides on this wall. We will use them to mark the place for some cylinders along this wall and the opposite one. So for me, I will add a plane and collapse it into one vertex, then place it on those guidelines and extend it along the wall height. After that, we can convert it to curve and use the bevel settings to make it into cylinder. This way we have more control over the number of sides, and also you still have the option to use it as a path for more sweeps. So in the bevel tab, increase the depth value to around 1.5, and with the resolution, we can control the sides number. Once you're done with it, we can hit Ctrl D and copy it along those guidelines. Now the ceiling sweeps still need some elements, so hit append again and import those decorations. We will copy this along the ceiling sweeps one by one, and I will do it the old way, put it in the right level, move it in place, and copy it around. So I will select the first one with the ceiling and isolate them, then in the front view, turn to X-ray mode and move it up to this level. From the top view, move it back to the right place, and scale it to fit the area. Once we're done with that, we can move it to the corner, then in edit mode, I will delete some parts so that it closes with each other's once we copy it. After this side, we can select those three objects and copy them to the next one. Here in this corner, once we're done placing those parts, we can go into edit mode and delete any extra shapes. We can now select the other shape and isolate it. This second shape will go under the first one, so as before, in the front view, move it to the level needed, scale it to fit, then from the top view, move it back to the right place. We will copy it in the same method along the ceiling's sweep. This looks much better than before, and you can go the extra mile by adding more shapes on the top level of this sweep, maybe even importing a crown corner mold. All options are available. So now, we can continue with the append process. I will import a classic type window to close those gaps in the wall. Once you imported any object, use the G to move it in place, then scale it to fit if needed. In the top sweep, we can do an extra thing on it, so I will convert it to mesh. Then in edit mode, we can select those faces by holding Shift and Alt for multiple ring selection. Once we're done, hit P to separate the highlighted faces. I need to add some straight cuts on those edges, so first, I will add one cut and hit Ctrl B to bevel it like shown, and this will make the cuts inside the bevel area straight. After that, we can hit Ctrl R to add another cut and increase the number to around 42 for those long edges. For the short sides, we will do the same, add a cut on each of them and bevel it so that the cuts come straight, then add some extra cuts and make them match distance on the long edges. Now while those edges are selected, we can go to select similar and choose it by similar length. This will highlight all the cuts we made with some extra ones on the corner that we don't need, so hold Ctrl and deselect them. Once you're done, hit Ctrl D and copy those edges, then separate them from the main mesh. We will convert those edges into curves and use the bevel depth to give them some thickness. We did that with the cylinders along the wall, so the process is the same. And here how it looks. By now we do need to close the ceiling from the top, so select the top faces and bridge them. We will import some decorative plaster to finish the ceiling, so go back to Append and import it. Here it is. Rotate it by 180, then to align it with the ceiling, we can use the Align tool. So first, make sure the ceiling origin is set to its object mass. After that, we can select the plaster, then the ceiling, and with the Align settings, hit Align to All. If you don't have the Align tool, jump to the add-ons and enable it. It's built in Blender. And make sure to select the object you need to move to at last. In this case we need to move the plaster to the ceiling, so select the ceiling last. Now the rest is the same, so I will import the remaining furniture and show you how it looks. Here it is. Hope you've learned something useful from this course. So that's it guys, stay sharp, goodbye.